To understand why Somaliland became a country that doesn't exist, we were immensely lucky to sit down with Dr. Edna Adan, one of the most significant and important personalities in Somaliland. First of all, Dr. Adan, I'm so honored to be sitting down with you.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, I feel...
You came very highly recommended.
Oh, that's great. As a nurse, midwife, and activist, she was the first female foreign minister of Somaliland, and previously served as Somaliland's Minister of Family Welfare and Social Development. She is the director and founder of the Edna Adan Maternity Hospital we're currently in. Having lived through many of these immeasurable, inhuman times, she's got a strong voice and opinion on Somaliland's future.
The Republic of Somaliland of today is a country that very little is known about, because it's a country that is peaceful and stable, and a country that is functioning, a country that people spend their energy rebuilding.
For our story, there are 4 key moments necessary to understand. The first is that the stark reality of this region, and like for the rest of Africa, borders here were drawn by the European colonizers. In 1885, European leaders met at the infamous Berlin Conference to divide Africa and arbitrarily draw up borders that exist to this day. A meeting that no Africans were invited to. Many ethnic groups were separated, and previous tribal borders were ignored. Our second key moment comes 80 years later, in the 1960s, as the colonizers left and African countries gained their independence. But after decades of separation, as cultures and even languages in some places had changed, most African nations decided that there were no other choice but to maintain the colonial borders. Somaliland was a British protectorate until 1960, when the British Empire left the territory. This meant that Somaliland had finally become an independent country for 5 days. Because just a few days later, once the rest of Somalia was freed by Italy, our third pivotal moment arrived as the two formed an alliance and became the Republic of Somalia. However, reconciling two nations that had been separated for as long as they had turned out to be incredibly complicated.
Now, with the Union, we were looking at ethnic similarities. We totally overlooked our differences. Corruption, the language differences, the culture differences, the ethics that were different. We had very little holding us together. And that's when the punitive actions started taking place. That's where the killing started.
Our fourth key moment was when Somalilanders eventually wanted their independence. And by the 1980s, a civil war broke out. Somaliland rebels began to rise up against the communist leader, Siad Barre. Then, in 1988, in a last resort to stamp out the rebels in his country, Siad Barre did the unthinkable. He ordered bombs to be dropped all over civilians and over the country, leading to what is today called the Hargeisa Holocaust.
This is the literal plane that was used in the genocide against Somaliland.
So this plane took off from the airport here to bomb the actual city?
Yeah, and all the people, all the residents.
Somali government aircraft would take off from the Hargeisa airport and then turn back around to make repeated bombing runs on its own city. By the time the bombing was over 90% of the city of Hargeisa was destroyed.
The most horrible human atrocities took place against the people of Somaliland. 250,000 of our people got killed. The city of Hargeisa that today has close to 2 million population. I visited it in July 1991, and I'm not someone who cries very easily, but I cried because I had never seen that level of destruction in my life. These are the horrors we lived through.
The civil war continued and many fled, but the border of Somaliland that only existed for 5 days was eventually secured by the rebels. The rest of Somalia has remained disputed up to this day, leaving Somaliland separated with their own political leaders, identity, currency, and army, but without their own country.
But in spite of all these facts, that Somaliland is not a colony of Somalia, is not a fragment of Somalia. The United Nations that once wrote about those atrocities today allows Somalia to sit in the United Nations seat and to represent Somaliland and itself, when it has absolutely no right to do that. Now the victim is being also told that the aggressor, your assassin, represents you. Somalia represents you. Somalia speaks for you.
A lot of these people sitting around here right now too, they lived through it. They lived through the genocide. So it's only 30 years ago, really.
Do you feel hopeful being here now?
Oh, completely. Yeah, because it's like a nation built by the people, you know, like we built it back up again. So it's so much more, it's like building your own home, right? You're gonna love it so much more.
Those who believe in human rights and who believe in justice and who believe in the voices of those who have been dealt an unjust, unfair deal should go back to the drawing board and look at the case of Somaliland and Somalia and give Somalilanders their day in court. I hope that my message will interest the minds of institutions that are created to protect human rights. And thank you for this chance. Thank you.